Welcome back to One True Podcast. I'm gonna call this the Unplugged edition.
Yeah.
How about that, Zach? It's just
It's
you
not
and
quite
me.
after. It's not quite after dark.
Not quite after dark. It's unplugged, all acoustic. We don't have a special guest this week. It just didn't work out with various schedules and things, but that's okay. You and I can break it down. So as far as Baylor TCU goes, this probably isn't the rivalry game that we expected at the start of the season. Perhaps it's fitting that it will be called the Bluebonnet Battle because these two teams have been frolicking in the flowers instead of punching people in the mouth. How about that?
There it is.
TCU, of course, coming off of a surprise appearance in the national championship game last year. But Sonny Dykes' team is 4-6 this season. They've lost their last 3 games in a row. Meanwhile, Baylor, 2 years removed from a Big 12 championship, is a woeful 5-7, really a mess, incapable of reaching bowl eligibility after that loss to K-State. So, is there any reason at all to even watch this one? And can you please explain to me why I am going?
Well, I've honestly never been to the Ammon G. Carter Stadium, but the press box food must be amazing for you to make that drive. So you'll whatever. But looking back at this rivalry, really for the last decade, right? It seems like no matter where these teams are record-wise, this has been a really good game, right? So, I think of last year, TCU was undefeated. Baylor was kind of trying to get to a bowl game, and it's kind of comes down to a last-second kick, right?
Yeah.
So
it came down to a fire drill field goal.
right.
It was incredible.
If you're a fan of football and you want to watch a good game, historically, this game has been really good. So, that's, I think for me, that's reason enough to watch the football game, aside from, the rivalry and the history and whatever you want to call it, Bluebonnet Battle, rivalry, what's the other, Kalashi kerfuffle, whatever you want to call it. The rivalry, the history is there. And like I said, it's been a good game. So that's what I'm looking forward to, is just maybe a more competitive game.
It has been in recent years. TCU has had the upper hand.
Right.
What is
right.
it? I want to say 7 out of 8. Is that
7
right?
out of 8.
Yeah.
Baylor's only win was a triple overtime win, though. So
yeah. Well, I've seen some crazy ones. Absolutely. Going back before the 7 out of 8, of course, Baylor fans will love to recall 61-58, one of the all-time great games, maybe in Baylor football history. Bryce Petty led them back like Lazarus. I mean, it was unreal. Game-winning field goal. We told you earlier this week that the next year Baylor really trolled TCU by lining up numbers 61 and 58 together in the
just a coincidence, right?
Huh?
Just a coincidence,
right? Yes. You mentioned last year and the way that one played out. The triple overtime one may have been, I'm trying to remember now if that's the one, but I think it was, that had some of the worst weather I've ever seen.
Okay.
It was just basically a typhoon. Guys were sliding all over the place. I mean, it was a real mess. So yeah, there's always weird things happening. Last year, would last year have been the first time without Gary Patterson, or was that 2 years?
Yeah, that was last year. Yeah, because last year was Sonny Dykes' first year. So
right, but I think actually I think it was 2 years ago, because I think they got rid of Gary right before the Baylor game, and at that game, I spotted a Gary Patterson lookalike in the stands. Ooh. And that was weird. It felt like Gary was there, was watching the game.
Was he recording it for his future job with the Longhorns? Like the
I
Connor
don't know.
Stallions before Connor
Uh,
Stallions.
there's been a lot of weirdness in this rivalry, and I don't really expect that to change. Who knows
Right.
what'll happen on Saturday? But I used to watch Big Brother, that show, and one of their mottos was expect the unexpected. So I'm expecting the unexpected.
Is that why you're going? What are you looking forward to?
I don't know. I'm just going because it's 90 minutes up the road, and that's what we do.
You can stop at the check stop. That's a
That's
bonus.
right. And we'll talk more food later, but
Right.
so we've talked a lot about Baylor's kind of spiral this year. Obviously, we don't cover TCU on a daily basis, but from your perspective, what has led to this erratic season for the Frogs?
I don't want to. This sounds like Baylor. It sounds a lot like what happened with Baylor. Chandler Morris was their starting quarterback. He was expected to be the guy, and he was the guy for the first 4.5 games or so. Then he hurt his MCL, kind of like Shapen did. He hasn't played since midway through the Iowa State game. And so they've been dealing with some injuries and some stuff on that front. But then I look at, like, last year was almost kind of a fluke, right? They obviously made it to the national championship game. They deserve their flowers for getting there, but like they had a lot of big plays to get there. Just kind of, I think Gary Patterson,
including that fire drill.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, I wrote it at the time. The odds of them pulling that off were astronomical. And the fact that they were able to do it was, it saved their season. They don't play in the national championship game without that win.
They got it off with like 2 seconds left?
Yeah, they ran those guys on the field with like 15 seconds. And they had to get lined up and kick a fairly long field goal in that amount of time and just barely got it off, like you said.
Wow. But like TCU last year had 29 plays of 40 yards or more, whether that was a touchdown or not. This year, that number is 3. So, just the kind of the explosive, the big plays that kind of help TCU win all those games and get to the national championship game have not happened for them this year. And so I think that, and just some of the execution issues that have come with kind of having backups play significant minutes, I think that's kind of helped have them spiral, not quite to Baylor's level, but close.
They're only a game ahead of them. Yeah, I think you hit on it. I said it again in probably a column last year. I was like, TCU is living right, and the Frog fans, some of them came after me, like that I was diminishing what they had done, but no, it was a year where like everything went right. And I gave them credit for that. You still have to win. You still have to pull those games out. But it does turn out, it turns out that quarterback matters. If you'll recall, last year, Chandler Morris started the season as the starter. By the way, a couple seasons ago was against Baylor was Chandler Morris's debut, and I always thought it was going to be called the Chandler Morris game because he came out and just torched Baylor.
Wow.
But yeah, he starts the year as the starter last year, and then Max Duggan takes over, and we know what happens from there. Mm-hmm. Max ended up getting my Heisman vote because I just thought he was so instrumental in everything they did. And I thought in the Big 12 championship game, which they lost to Kansas-State, and yet still made the playoff, I thought he was ginormous. He just like took the team on his shoulders, did everything. He was like hurt, but he was, fighting out there, and it was really inspiring. And to me, that got my Heisman vote. So, I think they've missed Max Duggan. They've missed Quentin Johnson and, Hodges Tomlinson, Trevius Hodges Tomlinson, Midway kid who's now in the NFL. So Yeah, they've missed those guys. I mean, Hodges Thomason was a Thorpe Award guy. Quentin Johnston was their big play receiver. Max Duggan was, just their do it all everything. And others that they
Right.
lost. So I don't think it would have really even been fair to think that TCU could replicate last season, but I also don't think anybody really saw 4-6 necessarily coming.
Yeah, there was probably some. I mean, they could have easily beaten Texas last week. They held them to 3 points in the second half and kind of really made some halftime adjustments. So that yeah, they are. I think they are very. I know it's cliche, but they're a much better team than their record shows. Right?
Yeah, they've played some close games and lost for sure. Um, Meanwhile, Baylor coming off a not so close game, and I can't remember the number of times we've heard Dave Aranda say that the film was humbling and frustrating to watch. I feel like that's how every Monday press conference starts. We've talked a lot this season about Aranda and his coaching staff and their status and their performances. But is it possible that Baylor just isn't talented enough, that they don't have enough players? And how much do things like the transfer portal, NIL, what do those play into that?
Yeah, I mean it's huge, right? And at least Aranda admitted that he was kind of wrong in not going into the transfer portal sooner. And this year, he had like 13 new players from the transfer portal, some key players like Mike Smith, who is out for the year, the Barrington brothers on the offensive line, who, the offensive line story has been told. So, I think it's hard for players to transfer to a spot like Baylor. And I think because of the NIL situation, I look at like Texas Tech. I know Texas Tech isn't having the season that I think that Joey McGuire and they hoped for, but the collective there, the NIL opportunity at Texas Tech, you just being on the team, regardless of how you're doing, you're kind of guaranteed a certain amount of money, right? Mm-hmm. And I can't say that about Baylor. I know Blake Shapen has an NIL deal with Friendlies, right? But that's the only one off the top of my head that I can really think of, in terms of NIL. So I think that Baylor is really falling behind in that category. And, Dave Aranda is trying to catch up in the transfer portal, but already behind in NIL. And, that's a tough hill to climb, especially in today's kind of ultra competitive top tier Big 12. So
yeah, it is, and it's probably something that Baylor will have to address. And I mean, you just have to, I guess, tap into money people. I mean, it's interesting. For years, athletic directors would hit up donors and fund boosters for money for facilities. Well, now. Now it's different. Now you gotta
players.
Yeah, it's players. I mean, you want to win. I mean, I'm not saying forget about facilities, but I mean, really, it probably should start with NIL in today's game.
And it's going to be just as hard for Baylor to keep the freshmen that they have, right? Because there's a lot of freshmen that are, performing. Dawson Pendergrass, Caden Jenkins. Caden Jenkins, I think last night tweeted just very cryptically, respect my decision. That was the tweet, right? And so Baylor Twitter and kind of the world at large, kind of, you can read that in so many different ways. What decision is he making? Is he deciding whether he wants to go to Chipotle, or is he deciding if he wants to leave Waco altogether? So like, what decision are we respecting, Caden Jenkins? So it's just, I think it's all going to start piling up, especially these last couple weeks, and it's going to be just as difficult to keep players as it is to get new players.
Yeah, it's a strange new world of college football, and Baylor's trying to figure out how to navigate that. So, we talked about it last week here on the pod, but the big game in the Big 12 this week is the Sunflower State showdown between Kansas-State and Kansas. Still a top 25 matchup. The Wildcats pounded Baylor 59-25 last week, but the Jayhawks suffered kind of a surprising 16-13 loss to Texas Tech. Didn't really see that one coming. Maybe takes a little of the shine off of this game, but it's still a big one there in Lawrence. So what would you put the odds of little brother knocking off big brother? And when I say little brother in this case, even though Kansas is probably the bigger school, from a football perspective, K-State is the big brother.
I mean, maybe it's recency bias, but I don't. It's hard for me to pick against Kansas State right now. The way that they just kind of shellacked Baylor, and I think Kansas is down to their third string. He got knocked out in that, or the backup got knocked out in the Tech game. So, I
they miss Jaden Daniels.
They really do, and even like Bean, he did a great job, kind of in relief. But Kansas State is just. They're just such a sound team, right? They could easily be undefeated or have one loss this season. Close loss to Texas, a 60-yard field goal to Missouri, and Kansas State is just too good a team to pick against, even in a rivalry game against a much better Kansas team.
Yeah. I mean, even if they had both been, completely healthy, I think that K-State might still be the pick. Just we've talked about what Chris Kleiman has done with that program in terms of building it almost like a modern day version of Bill Snyder's best teams, which, I mean, I think they have maybe a little bit more creativity in some of the things they do, but they're still, just very disciplined, very, I don't think they're loaded with 4- and 5-star guys. I think they find the guys that fit what they do, and they work them out, and they develop them into good players, and they've done that. I mean, K-State's got it going, and I like them in this game. It should be a rocking atmosphere in Lawrence, and that'll be fun. So we'll see how it goes. Let's talk Fort Worth food. So how much time have you spent in the DFW area?
Man, I think the only time I've only been to the Stockyards. That's the only place I've eaten. I was up there in 2015 when Michigan State got absolutely spanked by Alabama in the playoff. And my friends and I went to the Stockyards for barbecue, and I got a giant beef rib. That's the only thing I've had in Fort Worth, so I am completely green when it comes to Fort Worth food.
All right, so I am not.
Clearly.
Yeah, I've been to DFW more times than I can remember, including yesterday. I was in Garland yesterday covering high school volleyball state tournament. A few places, and so our main tradition that John and I would always pretty much do, and this is what I would suggest for us on Saturday, is to get up there a little bit early and hit Kincaid's, which Kincaid's is a fantastic burger place. Started there in Fort Worth. It has multiple DFW locations now. I think there's one in Arlington. There might be one in Dallas, but there's probably 5 or 6 locations altogether. We always go to the original, which I think is on Camp Randall Boulevard. Is that right? Camp Randall, is that Wisconsin?
Yeah, that is.
I can't remember the name of the street, but it's anyway. It started as a grocery store, and when you walk through, they still have from decades ago, old cans and boxes on these shelves as you get to the counter to order your burger. We've talked about it before, how gross that would be to open up some of those, but the burgers are awesome. They're really good. So that's kind of a thing that we often do before a TCU game, rather than partake in the press box food. I mean, you could still eat in the press box too, but
why not?
Yeah, why not? A few other places. Joe T. Garcia's is a really good Mexican restaurant in Fort Worth that is highly acclaimed, I would say, and a good place to go. Babes Fried Chicken is up in the
I feel like I've
Metroplex.
heard of that one.
Oh yes. So Babes again has multiple locations. Really, really good fried chicken. I mean, and just they serve it family style. I passed it on the way home last night, and I had already picked up some fast food, but I was thinking to myself, I'm going back on Friday to cover Crawford. I may have to get some Babes. So I may be eating Babes chicken on Friday night and Kincaid's burgers with you on Saturday. I'm gonna need to run a marathon.
There you go.
And then one more I'll mention is this will be speak to the Midwesterner in you.
There we
go. But they used to have a Geno's East location in Arlington. And Geno's East is probably my favorite kind of Chicago style pizza. Last time I went, that location was closed. There may be one more up in that area, but it broke my heart when it closed. I hope there's still one up there somewhere because I love Chicago style pizza, and Geno's East is awesome.
I'm not too like once
are you more of like a Detroit style or
no. I'm just like I kind of need to be in Chicago to eat Chicago style pizza.
I don't know. Yes, I get that, but let me tell you, they replicated it well. I've been to that Geno's East a few times when it was open, and it tasted just as good as it did in Chicago. So
I'm sure it's great. We have one. Well, there is a pizza place down in Austin called VF313. That's a Detroit style pizza, and it is pretty close. But like I said before, it's not the same, right? You got to kind of once you're in that Midwestern friendly
the ambiance, the atmosphere and all that adds to it. Well, that will be part of the experience at Kincaid's is the ambiance of the old grocery store, and the shakes are really good if you want to shake. But yeah, it's good stuff. So we'll have to get us some Kincaid's burgers. We have even this is how bad it is. It's only an hour and a half from Waco. We have stopped at Check Stop before and gotten our kolache and then driven another hour up the road and had burgers right after that. I mean, oh gosh.
It's just breakfast. Kolaches are just breakfast. It's just an appetizer. Right. It's like a salad, but
we're due 3 meals a day. Or 4 or 5. I don't know.
Your recommendation being in Kansas City last week, your recommendation of Joe's barbecue, that's kind of the same deal. It's in a gas station. I think that makes it better, right? Like
it does.
Kind of in a non-traditional restaurant. It's just better.
Yeah. One of Waco's best barbecue places is Guest Barbecue, which has a brick and mortar location but started as a food truck. So there you go. Humble beginnings, and we'll see if Baylor from its humble beginnings can make it a game out of TCU. It all comes full circle.
A food podcast with some football talk.
There you go. Beautiful thing. All right, we'll see you.
See you later.